Today we are discussing the poetry of Rita Dove. Like what you hear? You have a question? You have a comment? Leave a comment and don't forget to subscribe. All right, here we go.
Well, now that we're recording, happy birthday yesterday, Mike.
Oh, thank you.
Oh my gosh. Happy birthday, Mike.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Well, how is everybody?
Good.
I've been
Very
doing
well.
a bit of housework, so I'm really hot.
Oh,
Yeah, it's about 78 degrees here.
You should have turned
Activity I'm not used to.
I was just thinking, so I will be out on the 6th and the 13th, though.
Right.
oh. So the
I'll
third,
be in Buffalo, but I'll have my machine and I might be available. And I could show you all out my window beautiful downtown Buffalo, New York.
oh my
I got
God,
that.
that'd be a nice treat.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
I almost relocated there when I was working for Geico, but we
Be
didn't.
glad. There are all kinds of lines in literature and elsewhere about the wisdom of not going to Buffalo. At the end of Tender is the Night, Dick Diver is a dentist in Buffalo just before he falls off the face of the earth. And in Tony Rome, Frank Sinatra's character says about have you ever been to Buffalo, that when he was a child, he promised himself he wouldn't. And my favorite is in chorus line, one of the characters says that he was from Buffalo and he contemplated suicide, but he realized that committing suicide in Buffalo was redundant.
Oh, that's
Oh.
awful.
It always gets a good laugh. Anyway, I'm from Buffalo and proud of it.
Oh my gosh.
And that's because I'm a Buffalonian.
Oh,
I'm done.
Who doesn't live in Buffalo? Yes.
I'm buffaloed by all that you said.
That's a great retort, Linda.
Well, are we ready to talk about Rita Dove, or am I hurrying things? Shannon, were you going to tell us what to think about Rita Dove?
I'm going to tell you what to think about Rita Dove. I won't give you my opinion, but I know we all have an opinion, and nobody needs an extra opinion. I guess, is that
Go
the
for it.
surprise?
Go
You're gonna-
I
for
like
it.
the material you sent out. Thank you for that. It
Thank-
was nice selection, and it provided good context for me.
Good.
So, Shannon, tell me why you seem to not like Rita Dove.
Well,
What's that all about?
here's my problem. I have great respect for Rita Dove and her accomplishments, and I have ever since I entered into the world of poetry back in 2009, I noticed a pattern when I would go and hear when I'd go to various readings or meet many people in not just the Pacific Northwest, but then also people that were visiting, touring poets from other states. And it appeared, and this is where I have to be careful, because I just want to say a disclaimer that I don't want to, I'm not here to insult anybody or cause any kind of problems. And so I'm going to use my words very carefully, which means I'm thinking them up the top of my head as I speak.
Shannon, You could
Yes.
teach Stephen King about how to handle suspense. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Get it out, my dear.
I have noticed a pattern that once a poet is recognized and wins one award, they're suddenly on this list nationally, and they're slowly, and the more awards that they get, there's kind of a snowball effect where all of a sudden, no matter what you write, maybe it's too extreme to say no matter what you write, but you tend to get on this list and people look to you and you're getting published and picked up. And I've asked myself this question. I do not have an answer yet, although I have an opinion, but I have no strong actual confirmed answer. If you are a poet with a lot of awards and your poetry is mediocre, what does that say about the process of publishing?
Well, are you saying your subsequent poetry does not measure up? After recognition, the poetry that you write falls off? Is that what you are saying?
I think that's what I'm saying. Of course, you have said it much better than I have. And I appreciate that because it's like and then I think an example to help prove my point, and I think this will fit hopefully what you just said, Ron, is if you were to take a poet who has been published numerous times and has received numerous awards, if you were to strip their name off of it and take that poem to a forum, a poetry discussion group in a small town, and the folks read it, would they be as blown away as the multiple awards that the poem has won? And I think sometimes yes, sometimes no. I don't think there's really a consistency there.
Well, I think it's a great question, and it probably never come to an answer completely. But it's a question I think about many areas of human accomplishment. An architect, an athlete, the salaries that professional athletes get, and then suddenly they don't produce the same way as when they were hungry. And is it the hunger, or is it the need, the impulse to show people what you're capable of? And then what happens when suddenly you're regarded as the model? Probably there are cases, and especially in art, I think of Picasso and his later work. There are people who just say that he deliberately toyed with us. Dash things off, and I don't know how to evaluate things like that. But what does everybody else think about this?
I was thinking kind of like the one-hit wonder musician. So, I mean, you write some songs, you probably practice a long time, and then suddenly you have a song that's really popular and everybody wants to hear everything that you write. The demand on that person becomes extraordinary because before nobody would listen to them. Now suddenly they're very popular. We want to hear everything about them. And we want to know a lot about that person. So I think it's hard to, I'd say, to measure that creativity in the beginning, because what we've seen and what made them famous is probably a smaller sample of their work. Then once we do see them, we want to see a larger sample. They start cranking out stuff because of the demand, and there probably is some creativity, some edge that's lost that. But I think it's really neat to see how some artists are able to maintain that over a long period of time.
Well, think about Harper Lee and To Kill a Mockingbird and the absolute desert of material existing between her and, what was it, Go Tell a Watchman, and how inferior that book was to Kill a Mockingbird.
Mhm.
And in a way, I think I don't know about this generalization. I think you have to measure it. You have to apply that measurement to every author, because some people may just be a one book author and that's all they can do.
I also think it's really complicated, as complicated as life. And so it's, as Linda says, you have to look at each example. I just was handed 4 books from Sherman Alexie. Oh my gosh, was he an amazing storyteller.
Yeah.
I read them all. In, one right after another, each story first person. And to be out in the publishing world takes its toll. And critics are harsh.
Mhm.
And is he a one-hit wonder? No. Not, but it's a harsh world on authors, and sometimes you can't sustain the pace if you're the popular one of the moment. And I haven't seen that he's publishing either, right? It's a complicated thing.
People
I'm not
too.
holding
And
him
when we
up.
find out they're not heroes.
Yeah, that's it. They're human beings, and and then Marvin Gaye, the musician. Oh my gosh.
Well,
Extraordinary.
the phrase
Talented.
of dismissal is a one-trick pony, where it becomes reduced even to a gimmick. There's a dimension of this, and I've said this before about Warren. He is in an interview with Ralph Ellison. Ellison asked him some questions, and Warren said every writer has one story to tell. And he goes back to that story again and again. And it seems to me, I believe that's true.
Mhm.
Some writers find wonderful, magical ways to retell it. Others tell it one time with real force. Melville's Moby Dick. There are people who would claim it's the greatest novel in American literature. I wouldn't, but others do. It's way beyond the rest of his work, which has to do with journeys into the unknown and discovery and the examination of the self. All his novels do, but he wrote one novel that did it supremely well. Probably the same could be said certainly about Twain, certainly about Hawthorne. Their great works were so far above everything else that they did. But maybe we lose focus. What do you say about a Hawthorne who publishes the Blithedale Romance late in life? Oh, that again. Instead of, my God, the guy produced a masterpiece. Why would we expect him to do it again?
Mhm.
Look at all of Shakespeare and how many great plays do each of us as individuals think that he wrote out of the 36? Probably a few.
Yeah. Interesting.
I was thinking early on in this conversation, and then when you mentioned Picasso, I wonder too if we fall in love with something that someone has created, and what we expect is that they will create something like it, so we get more of what we liked. I think some artists want to experiment, want to change, want to be,
Right.
and sometimes we're not generous to that.
Well, like Jim Carrey, if you follow his career, he's gone totally into painting. He does painting on the side now, and he loves it. It's such a freedom for him. And it's, will people allow him to paint? Pierce Bronson is a painter, the actor Pierce Bronson, and
so's George W.
Let him paint. Maybe the question isn't so much the critics and the publishers, it's the consumer, which is us, the people that are listening and buying the music, buying the books. Maybe we should relax a little bit and not be so demanding. But I don't know who's cracking the whip over their head. Is it their own perfection? their own sense of perfectionism, or is it their their publisher or editor?
Last night, Mike and I were talking before we started playing chess and then stopped talking to each other about what I think is an interesting case. We're both real devotees of Leonard Pitt's syndicated column. And he writes a column about once a week that's about the same length and follows the same formula. He'll get into something that has some personal impact for him, then he'll broaden the discussion about the social impact and explore it that way. And then he ends up with a little coda that almost always has some pronounced irony in it. A 1 or 2 word sentence, its own paragraph that does the wrap on it. And you expect it when he writes it. Every time I read one of his columns, I realize how much I admire this guy's work and his honesty and the integrity of this column. But I'm also marvel. I said to Mike, if we discovered that they told him that every column had to be 1,023 words, it wouldn't surprise me at all, because they're so alike, the columns in their form and in their approach to examining the issue. And yet I find them so refreshing, each one.
So it has a formula, but it's not formulaic in terms of content or meaning.
Yeah. Yeah. So he manages creativity within that formula.
I'd love to find a formula like that.
Tell him, I think he should write for sitcoms. They need that after the second season of any sitcom, actually about the third season, you can see a definite pattern.
I think we're going to turn to the poems soon, and we should decide as we start that we're going to do another week.
All right. I wanted to thank you, Ron. I would like to at least read this out loud just so you can hear it. What her background is. It's just a real basic outline about her life. Rita was born Rita Frances Dove, August 28th, 1952. And she was born in Ohio as an American, and she is considered an American poet and essayist. From 1993 to 1995, she served as Poet Laureate Consultant in poetry to the Library of Congress. She has a distinct honor of being the first African American and the youngest person to serve as Poet Laureate of the United States from 1993 to 1995. In 2008, she was named poetry editor of the New York Times Magazine. Maybe you've heard of it. It's just this little magazine on the East Coast. Her education, 1977, she got her MFA in creative writing at the University of Iowa. Now, in her early life, both her parents encouraged persistent study and wide reading. And from an early age, Rita loved poetry and music. She played the cello in her high school orchestra and led her high school's majorette squad. She was an exceptional student and was invited to the White House as a presidential scholar out of high school. She studied in Germany on a Fulbright scholarship, later teaching creative writing at the Arizona State University. And I think one of the tells for her is her early, as an adult, when she's asked what her biggest influences are on her writing, she does not name another writer. Her parents, her father's a chemist and her mom was a homemaker. So I just see her as being extremely grounded. She starts writing in 1980, and her first book is The Yellow House on the Corner. And boom, 6 years later, the awards just start coming in. In 1986, she got the Puzzler Prize winning for her poetry book, Thomas and Beulah. 1996, the Heinz Award in Arts and Humanity. 2003, Emmy Corrick Leadership Award. 2006, the Commonwealth Award. 2007, Chubb Fellowship at Yale University. 2008, Lydia Virginia Lifetime Achievement Award. 2009, the Fulbright Lifetime Achievement Medal. 2009, again, International Capri Award. 2014, Lifetime Achievement Award from the Furious Poetry Center at James Madison University. 2019, North Star Award from Hurston Wright Foundation. And 2019, she also received the Wallace Stevens Award given annually by Academy of American Poets in recognition to recognize outstanding and proven mastery in the art of poetry. And if that's not enough, good Lord, President Bill Clinton bestowed upon her in 1986 the National Humanities Medal, and President Barack Obama presented her with the 2011 National Medal of Art, making her the only poet who has received both medals. Dwight Gardner for the New York Times in 2016 said, "There are so many casual pleasures in Miss Dove's poetry that the precision and dexterity in her work, the darkness too, can catch you unawares. Miss Dove's poems have earthiness, originality, power, and range. Despair and loss are among her central themes, but so is the hunt for bedrock human pleasures." And so I really like his particular review because I agree with it. And I think I'm really interested in discussing her work with the group today, because I'm wondering if we're going to find those moments that are going to catch us unaware. The poems that I selected, I just have one last thing and then I'll be done. The poems that I selected were straight up Google searches. What are the best poems by Rita Dove? What are Rita Dove's top 10? I Googled it a few times and I've picked these poems that we're about to read because her collection is pretty massive. She has about, so I counted it before I came on. She has 11 poetry books. I am just really thankful for this opportunity to talk about her, and I look forward to the discussion we have about her poems.
Shannon, Emery asked you a question about whether you're put off by her poetry. That she didn't put it that strongly. And before telling us how amazing she is, you made some suggestion, if I heard you right, that in many poets there's a falling off after fame. And we could choose a poem and get into it, but do you want to say anything by way of clarifying that?
I think that
you did use the word mediocre.
I did.
To describe her work.
Okay, I'm gonna just be the villain in this episode. Because I admire someone who works so hard, especially someone working for the Library of Congress, you know, and all that preservation of literature. And I just have to ask myself, do I like her poetry? Is her poetry good? Quote unquote, is it good? And of course, that right there is the definition. We'll never find the answer to the actual, but we all have a personal opinion. Instead of snowballing into a puddle, she snowballed into like a full-fledged snow woman, you know, if that metaphor works. Her awards and her productivity increased as her career grew. Is there a poem that has jumped out at anybody to start off with?
Let me start with the first one, Rusks. Unless somebody has something different they want to start with.
Parsley is a pretty deep poem. If you read the footnote on it,
Mhm.
it's a pretty heavy poem.
Which are we looking at? Rusks?
Rusk is a poem that showed up on all of my searches.
I would like, this is a good one to start with, and I hope this helps frame the discussion some. I read her poems. I read them like I read everybody's poems, our own, and 10 or 12 times each. And I have to read every poem a couple of times to feel like I've got a foothold. And when I got into the poems, I thought the language and the phrases were very captivating and engaging.
Yes.
But like many of the other poems, I struggled for context. I might say I didn't know what it added up to or what occasioned the set of sentiments in it and observations. Although the poem itself, I knew there was something working there that was worth paying attention to.
Ron, would you read it for us?
Is that a punishment?
No.
Yes, I'll be happy to.
It's in a.
For speaking out, yes.
Rusks. This is how it happened. Spring wore on my nerves. All that wheezing and dripping while others in galoshes reaped compost and seemed enamored most of the time. Why should I be select? I got tired of tearing myself down. Let someone else have the throne of blues for a while. Let someone else suffer mosquitoes. As my mama always said, half a happiness is better than none at all.
Is she inviting readers to enter her poems and make their own context and meaning? This is how it happened for her, these feelings. How does it happen for someone else? Because what she's talking about is tearing oneself down.
Actually,
and why she feels select.
I will confess that the poem came together for me while I read it out loud better than it has before.
Oh.
And I can see that the first section states an attitude, and then why she turns. Spring wore on my nerves, and then why should I be the one objecting to it all? And she immerses herself too in the joys of spring. Although she doesn't say exactly that, but she stops tearing herself down. What I said, though, I believe is true about many of the other poems. It's hard to put a frame around them and establish context, I believe.
They kind of take off running, but you're not sure where they started from, or you can guess where they're going, but you feel like you're catching it in mid run.
I just had to look up the definition of rusk. And now I'm more confused about what the poem might mean now that I know what rusks or rusk is.
Tell us what you think it means, Russ.
What do I think rusk means?
Yeah.
It's a dry biscuit.
Yeah.
A toasted, sometimes a twice toasted cake, often used as a teething biscuit for babies.
Oh.
Usually you often dunk it in your coffee to soften it. It's defined as a British term But yeah, a rusk is a hard, dry biscuit or twice baked bread, sometimes used as a teether for babies.
I realized that I looked it up and then I kind of forgot it because it didn't connect to the poem for me.
It doesn't connect to the poem at all.
Well, I couldn't decide how it did. I could invent something, but
Mhm.
I thought it was going to. I know what rusk is. I grew up in a family that ate lots of English delicacies and chomped on lots of rusk. But I thought it was going to have another definition like seed pollen or something, or tree drippings, and the whole hay fever kind of thing.
And my dictionary says it's a light, soft textured sweetened biscuit from Spain and Portugal, a coil twisted roll.
Well, there are those two definitions of it. They're both right.
Well, they're both. It is an edible thing. It is a biscuit of some sort.
Mm-hmm.
The only connection that I'm coming up between the title and the context is when a baby is teething, there is some whining and crying and a lot of saliva, which maybe could be related to the wheezing and dripping.
An obsolete definition of it is that it's a small piece of coal.
Well, she starts with one line. This is how it happened.
Which sounds like an invitation into a story.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't, this doesn't feel, it feels like a story when she talks about spring wore on my nerves. And then when she gets down to why should I be select, I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know what that reference was.
Do you think the person in the poem is a child or an adult?
I read it as an older child, a teen, a young adult.
Would a
I don't know
young
why.
adult say spring wore on my nerves? That just seems so philosophical.
Yeah, I thought it was an adult. I think, half a rusk is better than no rusk at all.
And what the heck does that mean?
I think it means that
Laura?
if you're hungry, you're going to eat a rusk. I don't think a rusk is something that's very, appetizing or something you look forward to. So you can complain about, all I have to eat is a rusk, but same time, it's something that you have to eat. So I don't know, I just see this poem as like a half empty, half full. How do you approach, your situation here? So she wasn't too happy about spring because it was wearing on her, but why should she, instead of looking at the half empty, look at the half full?
I think it's really a stretch to understand. I don't think it's well crafted.
And I think it's beautifully crafted. Let
Okay,
someone
good.
else have the throne of blues for a while. Let
Yeah.
someone else suffer mosquitoes.
Well, I like
But I'm going to be growing up and become and listen to my mama, which she said, half a happiness is better than none at all. There's the rusk. There's the meaning. There's the context. And we all get into the rut. That's saying, poor me. Do we not? That's
well, that
can
helped.
happen. No?
Yeah, that helped.
That did help. Thank you,
Yeah,
Betty.
that helped.
Yeah.
I mean, I do agree with you. I like the language of in that second stanzas. Why should I be select? I got tired of tearing myself down. That's pretty
Mhm.
earthy, and yet throne of blues is a nice phrase. And then right back to earth with let someone else suffer mosquitoes.
She experiences a dramatic shift in attitudes, and it's significant enough that she begins, this is how it happened. The it is noteworthy for her. So then she describes the two sets of attitudes, one of which I would characterize as the sophisticated dismissal of other people's jolliness about spring. Even in the mud, people are enjoying it, and she's thinking, this is crap. The wheezing and dripping and so on. And then she realizes that she's cheating herself. Why should I be select? I got tired of tearing myself down. And the weight of that sophistication, she hands off, just leaves off. And then we get a wonderful clue about what it's all about at the end. Let someone else suffer mosquitoes. As my mama always said, half a happiness is better than none at all. So I like the phrasing, and I do feel like in our little discussion in my own reading, I understood the movement in the poem better. And I'm not sure that'll happen with the rest of them, because I had a similar problem trying to come to grips with what they were really about.
What I find she does so well in these 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 13 lines is that she doesn't say, I'm going to ignore the drip and the mosquitoes and the things that make life miserable. They're still there.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to see them and experience them differently. That's how it happened.
Focus on the half of the happy.
Yeah.
The half of the wheezing and dripping.
Well,
As
yeah,
far as
is your glass half empty or half full? And she's not as corny as that, but she's decided that it's half full, half happy.
So is the message what's celebrated versus the actual craftsmanship of the poem?
Is it about mind over matter? Do you will yourself into seeing the world in a different way because you get weary of being the naysayer?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, that's what Poetry Club has done for me today, with Ron and Betty particularly adding in comments. I've changed my mind, and I have a better opinion of this poem than I did when I started.
I'm not saying another word. I'm not going to do better than this.
It's a
Why?
question
You're
we've
winning
come
her
up with.
over, Ron.
It's a question we've come up with before, is that, how much does the poet need to put in here so that we understand it, or we have a context for it? So could the poet give us a little bit more of a clue of what's going on, so we don't have to struggle to appreciate it later?
Why do you think Rusks is plural? So we won't get it mixed up with Dean Rusk, the former whatever he was in government. Why is it plural, Rusks? Is she just talking about, many kinds of things that are bad, like wheezing and dripping?
I wonder if it's a personal correlation for her and that we're not supposed to know. I don't have an answer.
I
Anybody?
can have a bad mood any day of the week. Can you?
Oh, no, never.
So,
Miss Grumpy in the morning.
and so, also I can go to the cupboard and say, oh, geez, I wanted this and all I have is yesterday's leftover whatever, right? And it's plural because it's not, life isn't full of bounty. That's it's a full of bounty of variety of challenges and joys. It's up to us.
I picture Rusk in a positive way. And whether or not you're talking, though, about a baby teething or an adult eating rusk, it's very much like eating biscotti. You have to really chew at it. You have to gnaw on it. And that's, to me, how she's using rusks. that you have to just kind of chew on it for a while before
Oh,
you
good idea.
the advantage.
Well,
You
Emily,
know-
if I run out to the store and buy Rusks and you have it for breakfast, you'll understand why.
Be okay with me.
I really like the second section where the poem turns and she defines her new set of attitudes. A lot of us would write, why should I be different? Or why should I be unique? Why should I be select? Such an interesting term.
Yeah.
And most of us, I believe, would make that the second line. We would make the transition with, I got tired of tearing myself down. Why should I be select as the explanation? And she inverts the explanatory phrase. And then the two items that she selects as images and concept to support the throne of blues for a while, let someone else suffer mosquitoes. You know, if you're going to choose two items, they're so well chosen.
And how do you think she's using the word select? What's her definition of select there?
Well, I think if I were going to paraphrase it, it would be, why should I choose myself as the counter person?
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time thinking about that term as I read the poem and reread it. In other words, Emery, I don't know.
I think it's a very unusual use of the word select. First of all, she's using it as a noun, isn't she? And it's usually a verb.
Like the way I read it, and especially after the discussion, is that she's the first part of the poem is her situation, but then she's questioning her own reaction to her life, her allergies, and how she hates spring. Spring is kind of brings her trouble, but then she's questioning her own reaction to it. Why should I be select? Why should I be select in what I like and what I don't like and what I want my body to be like?
You know, I imagine her standing out in a world that enjoys spring, even the nastiness of spring. But someone in that world is going to say to her, get over it. Who the hell do you think you are? And that, for me, sums up select.
Yeah.
I read select as a little different because I thought it might be, why should I be select in terms of why should I be among the elite?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Yes, because that's the verb form. Carefully chose as being the best or most suitable, as in he was selected to take the part. Or as an adjective, carefully chosen from a larger number as being the best or most valuable.
So does that equal somebody who can enjoy spring without this hay fever and people in galoshes and enjoying, someone who would enjoy spring and not have any kind of physical ailments related to spring?
Well, we're almost at 4:00. Can you believe it?
God. I will say this though. I appreciate this poem more after the discussion. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I do too, for sure.
I think this discussion of this poem was one of our signal successes.
I agree.
I mean, just the power of collective exploration.
And it drove me to the dictionary twice.
I think it could be an example of transformation. I feel that my opinion changed.
Can we say we had
The discussion.
an epiphany?
Well, let's not get too Tony about it.
No, because I'm still confused about why should I be select.
Oh, I love that word because of how it plays double meaning. We read her long biography of all her awards. And so I think it's happening, that double meaning of select. Why am I the selected celebrity, elite? Why should I? And then all the opposite of that.
Mhm.
So I think it plays well in the meaning that she's going for.
I wonder if when the title Rusk came for her, is that how Rusks is that how she conceived of this
Yeah.
poem, or did it come after she had the central ideas?
I really see a whiny, cryy baby that she needs to stop. Like she's saying, I need to stop chewing on the Rusks. I don't need a pacifier. I need to grow up. I'm getting that.
Yeah.
I'm getting that vibe.
I think we're not going to be able to stop talking about this poem.
You know, it brings back a delightful memory for me. When I was vice president at Bellevue, one of the deans who reported to me was Jim Bennett, who was former basketball player in Minnesota and black and 6'6" and a really imposing figure. And he would stick his head in my door almost every night, and he'd say, "So long, boss." And I would say, "Good night, Jim. Have a good one." And he would say, "Yeah, as my grandma used to say, he grew up in Kentucky, very poor. It's the good Lord willing and the creek don't rise." And I'm not sure why it comes to mind, but it's the quoting of the mother who it's not quoting eloquence. You know, it's a real coming to grips with life through folk wisdom.
I like it much better than "Am I born in a barn?" That was repeated numerous times in my house.
She makes, by quoting her mom that way, and she makes her life seem more folksy than I think it was.
Mm.
Oh yeah, that sounds a contrast to the background, her father's job.
Right.
Yeah,
That's
and
true.
her very successful middle-class life and so on.
Yeah.
Well, there's more to that story. Her father did not have an easy life. According to the interview she did with Bill Moyers.
How so?
Yes.
Had your father's life been hard? Moyers asked, and she said yes. And I didn't realize it at that point when she got recognized as a high schooler. My father kept his trials and tribulations secret from us for many, many years. He had been one of the top students in his graduating class. He had a master's degree in chemistry, and all of his classmates got jobs as chemists with a tire and rubber industry in Akron. But he was hired as an elevator operator. So for years, while he was raising his budding family, he was ferrying his former classmates up and down on this elevator. One of his professors from the university kept bugging the administration of Goodyear This is absurd. You have this incredible student employed as an elevator operator. Finally, my father became the first Black chemist in the entire rubber industry. But I knew nothing of all of that until I was in college, when I thought that my father was insisting too much that we do it on our own. My mother would sometimes say, quote, "Your father really means the best for you. He knows what it's like. Just trust me on this."
Gosh.
Wow.
And he would make them look up words in the dictionary all the time. He wouldn't let them go by. And he wouldn't define them for them. They'd have to look it up.
Mm.
Oh, we're off to a good start with her.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah. Thank you. That's a good background. Oh my goodness.
I will stick with what I said. She still chose in this poem to make it sound homey, folksy, and I don't think that that's how she grew up. And the piece that you just shared, Betty, is appalling, and it's part of what we need to hear more and more about. The the terrible racism hitting it through all levels, and here through the educational system, and awful.
Well, it'd be interesting to apply this question of authenticity, is part of what I'm hearing, to the poems about her dialogues with her daughter that I thought were really powerful. And how she presents both characters in those.
Mm.
To what degree is there a self-critique in those poems, as well as the fears she articulates about her daughter's lifestyle?
Mm.
Well, it sounds like we have fruitful things to talk about next time.